Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, our play-by-email game against XTRG. It is December 14th, and we're playing through our turn, so we're waiting to see what happens on the most recent turn that has just been passed back to us from XTRG. If you recall, the Prince of Wales, a British battleship, has escaped into Singapore and is attempting to repair there, undergo some emergency repairs, hopefully so that it is able to escape from the clutches of the Japanese Air Force or Navy or whatever else continues to operate in and around Singapore. Meanwhile, the Repulse is escaping south. Both the Prince of Wales and Repulse were hit by torpedoes and surface actions off the Malay Peninsula a couple of days ago. The Repulse wasn't damaged as badly, and I'm trying to get it to escape to the shipyards at Cape Town in South Africa. So we'll see how that all plays. Meanwhile, we're getting this turn off to a start here with the S-39 being attacked by Japanese vessels off the coast of Grigsby. We're attacking, or at least attempting to attack, a Japanese submarine here off the coast of Singapore. And, yeah, I think the battle for Mersing, which is where the Prince of Wales and the Repulse fought, probably goes down as a victory for the Allies. We did knock out what I think was a full enemy regiment or brigade in transports at sea. We also sank an enemy battleship. We did lose a heavy cruiser and a light cruiser and a couple of destroyers, but that's a cheap price to pay, and even if the Prince of Wales gets sunk there, you're talking one battleship and one battleship, then a heavy, or kind of a wash, and then a heavy cruiser and a light cruiser and some destroyers for an entire enemy battalion and a delay in the enemy operations against Singapore. I think that's definitely a victory. As long as Repulse gets away, I think pretty much any other outcome has that being a victory for us. Meanwhile, it'll be interesting to see if he starts bombing Singapore. He has not yet attacked Singapore from the air. You can see here there's some submarine actions to the south of Singapore. He's torpedoed a armed merchant cruiser for us, and we've got some additional attacks in and around Singapore from his submarines, so he is operating against us here with quite a few submarines. Meanwhile, our own subs are kind of hanging out here in the southeast corner of the Philippines, and shit, we just lost a submarine sunk. The S-38 took 12 hits and was forced to the surface, I believe. Yeah, surface sub, and was sunk. So we lost our first submarine, I think, maybe our second submarine of the day. Meanwhile, well, this is interesting. Hong Kong fell last turn to the Japanese. These motor torpedo boats of the British Navy, which had been based there, are trying to escape somewhere, and they just detected two enemy aircraft carriers here. They're trying to maneuver to position to get some torpedoes launched on them. They closed as close as 10,000 yards. It doesn't look like they got any torpedoes in, and one of them was sunk from a single enemy shell hit. But let's take a look and see what's here. There are two enemy light carriers, the Zuho and the Rujo, or Zuho and Rujo, as well as a seaplane tender and four enemy battleships here. I don't know where they're sailing. I guess we'll have to take a look at that, because that's some key intelligence for us if we just detected some enemy submarine or enemy aircraft carriers. Again, they're light carriers, so I'm not as worried, but yeah, we just lost a transport off Pearl Harbor. So far, nothing else other than that vital piece of intelligence about where two of his light carriers are potentially located. Alright, there's some bombing going on in China, some more bombing going on in China. Oh, one other thing we did this turn is we issued several bombers orders to try and knock his airfield out at Kota Bharu. We have like 18 Dutch bombers flying out of the Dutch East Indies, and we have about 30 bombers flying out of the Malay Peninsula near Singapore. It looks like he has some nates that are providing cap. He's got quite a few nates providing close air support. Or combat air patrol, sorry. You can see here 16 bombers coming up from the south. 4 of them withdrew. The Hudsons withdrew due to being unescorted. Meanwhile, the Blenheims got ravaged there. 3 of them shot down. Some B-17s going in against these mates. Dropping bombs, not doing any damage. Nothing's hitting the airfield, as far as I can tell. Some Hudson's bombing. So 2 of them were shot down. They did drop their payloads. Doesn't look like they hit the airfield, though. 6 B-17s. Looks like his combat air patrol's being whittled down a bit just through sheer number of attacks. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is interesting. We destroyed 1 enemy G-3M2 Nell on the ground here in Kota Bharu. We got 1 runway hit. That's not going to do much in the way of delaying him or shutting the airfield down, but I think the bigger thing is that we discovered that he has moved some Nell bombers into Kota Bharu, which is a pretty big thing for us to consider, because that is definitely within easy striking range of Singapore, and if we do try and get the Prince of Wales out, I don't think there's any way, no matter how much we repair her, unless we fully repair her, which is not going to happen because that'll take a year, unless we fully repair her in Singapore, she's probably got no chance of getting away without strong enemy air attacks from Kota Bharu, because the Nell and the Betty both have very long ranges, and the speed reduction of the Prince of Wales, even if it's partially repaired, is going to prevent it from being able to sprint out of there without being detected. So that's good to know. That may have sealed the fate of the Prince of Wales already. Just that one piece of information here. He's got a lot of bombers fighting here just north of Canton. I think he's flown them into Hong Kong by the looks of it. China, if a Japanese player is smart, should be where you train your Air Force. Japan doesn't get good replacement crews as the war wears on, so they really need to have an area where they can attack enemy troops from the air without risk of air combat against them. And, that really is the case in China, as we don't have a lot of air units. We do have a couple of fighter units we moved in, the Flying Tigers, which could be useful in kind of, reducing the effectiveness of China as a training ground. But they really can only do so much, and they don't have very good range, so you kind of got to guess and hope you get your aircraft over where he's attacking. Meanwhile, a Japanese attack here near, where is this town? Near Kaifeng, over here in the north. It was a 1-2 odds, so they did not have odds. That means they largely got chewed up. They lost 1,600 casualties versus 262 Allied casualties, mostly just disabled, but still pretty substantial losses there. A couple of units destroyed. Meanwhile, Japanese bombardment attack up here near Kursui. The Japanese took San Fernando here on the northwest corner of Luzon. They're inching closer to Clark Field. And they also took this here on the peninsula just north of Legepsi also. Meanwhile, Naga also fell to the Japanese here. We had no troops on any of those bases. Same for this base here on the eastern corner of Luzon. So the Japanese are steadily marching toward Manila. Meanwhile, we did have a deliberate attack here against the Japanese troops and infantry battalion by the looks of it at Mersing. The troops they did get ashore, about 1,100 of them. We had 2-1 odds and we inflicted 20 casualties. We did lose 146 men, but we did have 2-1 odds, which makes me wonder if maybe a shock attack next turn might drive them into the sea. Meanwhile, we're attacking here between Xinyang and Hankow. The goal here is to cut the supply line to Xinyang to allow us to encircle and destroy any Japanese troops here, or at least take the city back. And then we'll have 2 cities on this rail line and prevent the Japanese from having direct rail supply to Hankow and Wuchang. So you can see here we launched a shock attack against these Japanese troops. There's a mixed infantry brigade, and there's a couple of local Chinese divisions. It looks like most of them are retreating toward Hankow. So we drove them back. We had 3-1 odds. The Japanese lost 1,400 men. They lost 122 squads destroyed. That is substantial. 130 non-combat squads, 8 engineers, 21 guns, 2 vehicles, 4 units retreated. We lost about 500 fewer men and only 9 squads destroyed. That was a very successful attack for us, and I imagine that none of those troops will be in very good condition to fight again soon. So that's good to see. Meanwhile, we launched a deliberate attack near Paotao against the Japanese there. We had 1-2 odds against us. The Japanese have a fort. So unfortunately we lost 102 casualties. The Japanese lost 23. Doesn't look like we have substantial enough forces there to overwhelm them up there. We also launched a shock attack here against Yichang. You can see there's 2 Chinese divisions. That's what the RGC is. They're local Chinese divisions. And there's 1 Japanese division there. The Chinese divisions are less fearsome. The Japanese divisions are very ferocious, and they stopped us with ease. Much heavier casualties on our end. Meanwhile, we launched a deliberate attack at Kisui here with our infantry corps. The Japanese bombarded us here. I'm not sure what the Chinang Tui brigades are. I'm assuming those are more local forces. There's also a Mongol cavalry division. But you can see here the Chinese successfully took this city of Tui, or Tutang, or however you pronounce it here. So 6-1 odds. The Japanese lost 1,134 men. We lost nothing. That's another 48 enemy squads destroyed. Infantry squads, 42 non-combat losses. Those are all good for us when it comes to like victory points and things like that. Meanwhile, more Japanese bombardment attacks here in the center of China. So some successes in the middle and north of China, although the attack in Yichang appears to have kind of spent itself. We really should not do anything more there until more reinforcements arrive, and whether we're able to supply the troops there or not is a big question. But I'm going to jump out because the turn's about to end, and then I'll jump back into the save file in just a moment because I've already issued a lot of my orders. Alright, so we're back in here, and first things first, let's take a look at the intelligence reports for this turn. We lost 14 units in air-to-air combat, 1 op loss. The Japanese only lost 1 unit in the air, 1 destroyed on the field, and 6 op losses. So in terms of casualties, we definitely lost more than them. Our bombers suffered particularly heavy this turn, with 6 Blenheim 1s, 5 Dutch 139 WH-3s, and 3 Hudson 1s destroyed. So we lost about 14 bombers. They lost 2 Babs, 1 air-to-air, 1 op loss, and 1 Nell there on the ground at Kota Bharu. So let's go over here and take a look. Kota Bharu is the airfield we were going after. We're seeing, and we had a lot of recon and missions over the airfield, so hopefully this information's pretty accurate. But we're seeing here that the enemy has 18 airfield damage and 30 port damage at Kota Bharu, so very limited airfield damage. He's probably repairing that pretty quickly. Meanwhile, 60 fighters are based out of here, 61 bombers, and 82 auxiliaries? That 82 auxiliaries seems high. I don't even know what that would be. What would the auxiliaries be? Like maybe air transports or something? Or recon, I guess, maybe? Although a lot of recon falls under bombers, especially for the Japanese. Their GM3 and GM4s are pretty good for recon. In any event, we're seeing a total of 200 fighters based out of Kota Bharu. An air capacity of 4 allows him to have, I think, 200 exactly without any penalties against him. It's a level 4 airfield. I want to keep bombing it, but I can't afford to keep doing what I did last turn. So what I've actually already done here is I've ordered all of my air units up here into bombing, all of my bomber units, that is, into airfield attacks at night. So they're less likely to hit the field and do substantial damage and shut the field down with night raids, although with this volume of raids, it's certainly possible. I think it's unlikely. But in addition to that, that'll kind of bump up the fatigue on his aircraft. So if he does try and order those bombers to fly, if they're basically kept up all night by bombing, that'll make them less effective because it'll bump their fatigue numbers up. Meanwhile, we have some 65 fighters ready at Singapore with an additional 10 in reserve. We brought the Flying Tigers, 1 squadron of them, onto the Malay Peninsula here, so these are our best fighters by far. We've got 18 of them. We're going to put them into a 70% cap over Singapore, and hopefully if he does bomb us, he doesn't send a lot of escorts, because we've got 65 of these things to rise to the challenge of any enemy fighter force or bomber force that may come after us. But we've definitely got all our eggs kind of in one basket here. Singapore's airfield is a level 6, so the fact that we have, this many aircraft located at Singapore is probably okay. It shouldn't be, super vulnerable to enemy attack. The more airplanes you have at a field, the more likely they are to be destroyed in the event of a bombing raid on the airfield. But because we've got 177 and the airfield can support up to 300, it should be less likely that we get some sort of devastating Pearl Harbor type air raid. Additionally, the 65 fighters that we have in cap orders should hopefully help prevent anything devastating from occurring. I don't know if Singapore has radars. I don't know if any of these units have radars. What about We should do all units. Come on, all units. We should do filter by headquarters units. Do any of these guys have radar? These guys have torpedoes, aviation support. I don't see anything with radar. Now, we do have ships in port with radar. So, again, I'm not really sure how that works, if we have radar or not guarding the port. But I sure hope so, because it'll obviously be very useful in scrambling aircraft. Meanwhile, if we take a look at our ships we've got, by the way, 4 destroyers here that I've left in the port that are kind of going through various stages of repair or refit. And then we have the Prince of Wales here. The Prince of Wales flooding damage before last turn, I believe, was at 67. So it is down to 58, which means they're pumping the water out of it, hopefully in order to get some better repairs done. The fact that its repair, or that its flood level dropped by 9 actually increased its max speed from 4 knots to 6, so that's good. The engine damage hasn't yet started to be repaired, but the current repair estimate time did drop by 1 day to 16, and that repair would leave it with 51 flood damage and 38 engine damage. Hopefully, my prayer is that it can make 14 or 15 knots, so we can try and escape it. But we'll see. I'm not terribly optimistic about its fate. The other battleship, however, that we were trying to escape with, I think has done a good job of getting out of here, and that's the Repulse. And we burned a lot of fuel, by the way, getting the Repulse down here. You can see the Repulse and its 2 destroyer escorts are very low on fuel. The Repulse's damage is up to 27 float, 25 system, 33 engine. So what we're going to do is we're sending the Repulse into Oosthaven here on the southern tip of Sumatra to pull some fuel. And actually, as the Allies, here's a spoiler alert, guys. I want to burn as much fuel as possible. So the main reason I don't send everybody around at flank speed is just the fact that it does system damage to your ship and makes it less effective, and means you have to put it in the yards. But in the case of something like this, where it's already going to need to spend a month or 2 in the repair yards, I am happy to burn fuel as much as possible, because every drop of fuel that I burn and pull out of the Dutch East Indies or out of Singapore is 1 drop more that the Japanese won't get. We've already pulled about 60,000 fuel out of Singapore. He's going to get a good hefty haul. I think he got like 100,000 fuel when Hong Kong fell, because I had no way to pull that fuel out. He's going to get 60, 70,000 fuel. I think there might be a refinery here or something like that. Actually, it doesn't look like it. But he may get some, a pretty hefty amount of fuel, but it'll be substantially less than it was before. I have no real viable way, especially with Nels up here now, if that intel's right, to pull more out of here. So we'll just kind of accept it is, it is what it is, and we'll kind of move on from there. Meanwhile, you can see we've got other ships like, on their way to Perth. Some of these 37,000 points of fuel came from Singapore. We've got some other ships kind of sailing around here, all trying to pull out. We've got these guys down here pulled about 20,000 fuel out of Palembang, but he's still over 100,000. I mean, these are the oil-rich islands that Japan is after for its economy, so there's got to be a lot of fuel there that we can't do a lot about. But again, everything we pull out is one less thing for his industry. In addition to that, some reinforcements have arrived in the region. The heavy cruisers Exeter and Cornwall, along with 2 light cruisers Enterprise and Glasgow for the British, have all arrived and are going into Batavia. We also have some ships moving around here to repair yards in Surabaya, and we have some destroyers kind of marshalling at Batavia. So my goal is hopefully we've got around 8 destroyers at the end of next turn, and 2 heavy cruisers and 5 light cruisers at Batavia, and maybe we can help kind of keep these sea lanes clear, although I'll have to think about that now that he's got these bombers up here. We may just keep our cruisers back here. Maybe they dart in or whatever if he goes for, what's it called? Singkawang? This is kind of a key base, by the way. This is a level 3 airfield that can support heavy Japanese bombers and could shut this whole area down and even start hitting the island of Java. So this is, and we frankly don't really have anything here to defend against. If he lands any meaningful force here, he's going to overwhelm and take this base. So Singkawang is my main concern. In terms of there's not a lot I can do to defend it, but right now my recon aircraft, which I do have patrolling this whole sea area, aren't seeing a lot coming after us. There is this one force here moving southeast, so they could be going for this, but I'm not sure if I think a day or 2 more is probably the time it would take for him to load troops up and actually get them supplied and moving. So I'm hoping we've got a couple of days more before anything like that is going to occur that we need to worry about. Meanwhile, up here near Victoria Point, he did move some troops in. He might be going because he sees the aircraft here. There's a few aircraft that were still damaged as part of the Flying Tigers up here. It's a sort of a fragment of the Flying Tigers units which moved down here to Singapore. So he may destroy those 4 aircraft, but they're kind of boxed up crates anyway. Meanwhile, not a lot else happening this turn. If we take a look at the units in Yichang, they need a break. You can see here these guys, their assault values have fallen substantially. I'm not sure if these guys fought last turn or not. Did they arrive or did they fight? Does it show me? It's kind of curious because there's quite a bit. I mean, there's 700 assault value, and that's more than what he has in place here. But I've also got like some shattered cores up here in the north. So I don't know. I don't really know what attacked last turn or not. Let's see here. The 94th and 75th Chinese corps. Let's go up here. Where do we go to combat results? Scroll down. Alright, so where's the fight for Yichang? Yep, shock attack at Yichang. 1 to 89 odds. That seems extreme. Also, apparently he did build a fort level back, which kind of sucks. The 94th did participate. The 94th and what? What was it? The 94th and what? The 94th and 75th. I think that was on there too. So if we move down here, that's Hangzhou, Pao Tao, Kousi. Sorry guys, I'm sure this is enthralling. Chang, 75th, where are you? 75th did participate as well. Unfortunately, none of our, we did lose 3 squads destroyed. Okay, so we're just going to kind of let these guys rest and refit, and hopefully we'll be able to gain some more supply. We also did, for what it's worth, I think we did cut Yichang off from its supply line. 2 Chinese corps with basically no supply, they're borderline starving, advanced here to the south of Yichang along this roadway. So I don't think he has any way to provide supplies to Yichang, which is good. Granted, we have very poor supplies in there as well, but maybe in a few turns, once some of these additional forces arrive and our supply situation gets even more desperate, we'll launch another shock attack and see if he's burned through some of his additional supply up here. He'll burn through even more of it if he keeps trying to build forts there. Meanwhile, we can clearly see he's making a move either on Loyang or on Changchao. We are building forts in Changchao. We've got level 1 forts. Level 2 forts will be ready next turn. We don't have enough supplies here yet for all the troops we have in place, but we do have a pretty strong garrison in place, about 800 assault value here. So, and I think we've got a few extra units on the way. I just have to balance, supplies against actual numbers of troops. I don't want to overwhelm the location. Meanwhile, we took this town here near Kousi, which again should cut the supply line for the Japanese troops up here north in Pao Tao. So that's good to see. I'm going to do a bombardment attack of the troops here to maybe burn some of the supply here that the Japanese troops at Pao Tao might have. Meanwhile, I think we're moving some of these guys toward Pao Tao. We are. So it's going to be a few more days here, but maybe, just maybe, we can destroy these units here in Pao Tao, or at least drive them out and retake that city for China as well. I think we're going to lose Hiwen down here. All we have is a war area headquarter unit in this city, and he's moved some troops in here, so that's going to happen. I'm also moving the 89th Chinese Corps here to cut the rail line between Suzhou and the other Chinese or the other Japanese forces here near Shanghai and all of that. This is a very vital rail line here, and he's going to clear it in a minute. Because we don't have very strong forces here on the defensive in this town in the center here near Queeth. So once he clears that, then rail supplies will be able to move north between Suzhou and Kifeng. But he's already got a rail line here. He can already go the long way around. So he's already got rail supplies over here. Maybe? Actually, Kifeng might not, because this unit here might be blocking it. But in any event, he'll clear the rail line. Hopefully in a week or so that we've got more troops right here. That'll then go ahead and block the rail line again. I don't imagine we're going to hold the town of Henan here in the center very long. And that's kind of the situation in China at the moment. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, I think we're still building are we building forts at Clark Field? I guess we're building a few. I'm kind of moving some troops around. I'm really trying to set an exterior defense here at Clark Field that allows us to delay the Japanese enough for us to really build up strong defenses in Bataan, which is where the majority of our effort to delay the Japanese is going to be. Likewise, I'll have, I think, one infantry division here in... actually, these guys are moving south to Batangas here. They're going to be essentially a hex out of Manila, again, to try and delay the Japanese, because I believe Manila's factories here, its resources and its factories, continue to generate supply. So the longer we hold Manila, the longer we generate supply here that can then be sucked into the defense at Bataan. So I'm going to move a defensive unit out here just to delay the Japanese by a few more days to hopefully prevent them from... too quickly driving us into the Bataan Peninsula. It's going to happen, but I'd rather it not happen quite so quickly. These guys are going to stay here too. Those guys are falling back to Bataan. That's fine. I also think it probably makes more sense just to pull the majority of these engineer units back to Bataan so we can kind of build up as much as we can in the way of fortifications here, because that's really where they need to be. And the more Japanese units we tie down by, holding Bataan as long as possible, the better. Asiatic fleet has a good deal of support. That's probably going to be valuable here. I don't want to leave too many men in Bataan, because when he attacks there, it's going to cause disruption and disorganization, and I want as many of my troops, in a sort of a healthy situation as possible. Move one armor unit here to the south as well, because they can move more quickly. Okay, so that's that. Meanwhile, I've started to pull some of my air units out of the Philippines here. We've got a pursuit group over here near Tarkin. I'm going to see if I can get these guys over to Singapore as well. I'm really going to try and concentrate as much of my Air Force in Singapore or near Singapore as possible to protect the Prince of Wales, but not just to protect the Prince of Wales, to protect the port itself. So again, we can hopefully hold out in Singapore as long as possible. I believe it also is generating supply as well. Its fortification level is up to 2. We're building it for another level to try and get it up to 3. How many engineers do we have in Johor Bahru? I need to make sure I've got as many engineers as possible building things. We're trying to escape some of our troops here in the north away from the Japanese. They haven't really started pushing inland yet, which I think is a mistake. They should have already taken Olo or Star and be driving on Georgetown. Maybe even have taken that. But they haven't, so we're trying to pull our troops back in towards Singapore. We'll probably set an exterior defense here at Johor Bahru, where we're building some forts here, and then once they're driven back from there, they'll fall back to Singapore, which will be kind of the last line of defense for that area as well. I've switched these bombers over to night attacks also on Kota Bharu, and I've moved this unit here, the 22nd Australian Brigade, is going to switch over to a shock attack to hopefully, just maybe, drive this Japanese unit into the sea before additional Japanese reinforcements can arrive at Mersing. We have some reinforcements on the way in the event the attack fails and that brigade gets shot up a bit. We have an Australian brigade on the way to stabilize the situation there before the Japanese can take advantage and make sure that we don't get cut off. We have a bunch of troops over here that are all kind of trying to fall back to Singapore. Some of these units are switching over to strat move. We've got the 28th Gurkha Brigade as well, which will be another 112 assault value, which is going to be railing back to Johor Bahru in a couple of days once it gets mounted up in trucks. Let's see here. I mean, those are kind of the high points. We've landed our first set of reinforcements here on the island of Suva. It is an American field artillery, 2 American field artillery battalions, and some engineers. So they're going to help start to turn Fiji into a fortress. I've got reinforcements on the way from the United States to Savi, to Pago Pago, to the island of Fiji, to the island of New Caledonia. I also have multiple British or Australian brigades on the way to Fiji to reinforce as well. They'll get there before anything from the U.S. And then we have some heavy cruisers here, a couple of heavy cruisers and a destroyer operating here west of Fiji. They've detected something. I don't know what. It might just be a submarine over this way, but they're moving that way to investigate. These guys, we've got another cruiser force over here, a heavy cruiser and some light cruisers and destroyers also moving to kind of hit them. And we've got some New Zealand light cruisers also moving up north. So we've kind of got ships closing on three sides on whatever the heck this is. I'm guessing it's just a sub, but who knows. Meanwhile, on the American coast, lots of ships are sailing all over. We're going to be sending a ton of ships to the American East Coast via the Panama Canal. We're going to set up a shuttle service between the East Coast here, which generates a massive amount of supplies. 65,000 supplies, 40,000 fuel are generated on the East Coast, I believe daily. And we're going to suck that supply. We're going to transit it to Cape Town. From Cape Town, we're going to transit it to Australia, and then Australian industry will turn that fuel and supplies into supplies for our eventual counterattack. Meanwhile, we do have a few reinforcement units going out. 3 transport units are going to be sending some reinforcements here to Kandari, to Ambion, and I think to Suryang. I can't remember, or maybe it was Ternite. Basically to build up some small mini bastions, hopefully to delay the Japanese advance as long as possible from driving further south once they eventually get that far. And I think that is about it for this turn. We're kind of doing similar things with transports and whatnot in India. Going to pull some supplies in from Abadan. It doesn't generate as much supply, but I believe it generates 1,700 supply and 15,000 fuel. So that'll be able to help power India's economy by sucking that fuel into Karachi, which I'm transporting a lot of fuel via cargo ships because I don't have enough tankers. Cargo ships are not a super efficient way to transport fuel. They can only carry about half their payload in fuel. But at the very least, that does mean they can, when they're off, the other thing is when they're off map, they actually have the ability to transfer that supply without burning any fuel. So at least they get 100% of their supply when they're moving off map to the target destination, or sorry, fuel or supply really. The S-39, this one's damaged here, so our subs are probably operating too close into the coast near Legepsi. Do we have shipyards here at Perth? We do, not much. What about down here at Brisbane? Yeah, we've got some near Brisbane. I'm gonna pull. I think I need to pull my submarines off the coastal routes because that S-38 was very badly damaged, and these other guys are kind of getting damaged too. So let's kind of maybe move our subs here into the gap between between the Philippines and Formosa to try and raid shipping there, because it seems like operating our ships too close into shore is just asking for them to get seriously damaged and sunk. And we've got a couple of subs here already that have suffered some pretty heavy damage, so we'll have to kind of return them as quickly as or get them back and repair a bit. I don't want the S-38s to be operating in close. We did lose that one ship last turn. Geez, this one already lost pretty heavy. Why don't we pull these guys back to Surabaya, actually? They're pretty short range. The S-boats are obsolete, so the fact that we lost an S-boat isn't the end of the world. They are basically World War I vintage subs. So it's not the end of the world that we lost them, although it is a little bit of a bummer because they're the one American sub that has effective torpedoes. They have the Mark... the Mark 10 torpedo, which doesn't have all the dud issues that the Mark 14 has. All the modern American boats use Mark 14s. The non-modern ones use the Mark 10, which is an older steam torpedo. All right, so I think we moved those units around. Let's see here. Yeah, so we're moving those subs back to repair. We've got some other subs here operating in the gap. We've also got a large number of submarines over here moving for the Japanese home islands or around there. Some of them apparently are going to be low on fuel when they get there. And these guys are all moving toward Japan, so it's a long trip. Meanwhile, we're pulling a transport out of Midway. we still have this task force moving north here. It doesn't say it's carriers anymore. It says 2 destroyers are spotted moving northwest, but I'm going to assume this is his carrier battle fleet. And again, he's either going to move it by Midway for an airstrike, or maybe he's even going to try and land on Midway. I'm not sure. But he is moving this north. I'm going to presume this is still the ships we identified as carriers last turn. And I'm going to give that a wide berth. So I've got a lot of shipping over in this area here to the east of Pearl Harbor. We actually have our 3 carriers have all united here in 3 separate task forces, all to the southeast of Pearl Harbor. And my goal for these guys is going to be to sail over here to the southern tip of the Big Island, and then they're going to get replenished here. We've got a replenishment, not that guy. I thought we have a replenishment guy. Is it these guys? Is this who I'm sending out? Yeah, okay. Remain on station. Okay, we're probably going to meet up here. So we're going to meet these guys to the south of the Big Island. They've got heavy cruisers and destroyers and escort, hopefully to prevent any subs. They'll top these carriers up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to move our 3 carriers, maybe for a quick swipe at Canton Island, and then ultimately either to Pago Pago or to Fiji to kind of buttress this central defensive line. Since we know his carriers are moving north toward Midway, I'm pretty confident moving my carriers toward Fiji to avoid any major enemy action. Meanwhile, we did also spot, what was that task force? There was someone over here. I don't know where. But apparently we don't know where they are now. Our motor torpedo boats, good luck, guys. I don't know if you're going to be able to get anywhere and fuel up at all. Can they refuel at Bataan? Do they have enough fuel to get there? Not quite. Almost. What if they go to Iba? Can they get there? Closer. That's the closest they can get to. So we'll move these guys toward Iba. Why are they taking this weird-ass, like, route? What's their routing? Routing control. I think we'll use direct. Mainly just because I want them to get into port as quick as possible. Okay, so yeah, they can just... It looks like they have just enough fuel to make it into Iba, these motor torpedo boats. And then once they're refueled there, we'll kind of leapfrog them south and maybe get them heading toward the Dutch East Indies or something. I don't know. I mean, I think we kind of agreed that like patrol boats would stay in as part of our house rules. They wouldn't be transiting large bodies of water. They'd be within like a hex or 2 of their base. But I didn't even... I mean, they just stuck in Hong Kong. So I had to move them. We lost the base, so they're kind of going that way. Yeah, so I think that's going to do it for this turn. One other thing worth calling out is I kind of merged some of these smaller fighter groups in the Dutch Air Force here at Djambi, or however you pronounce it. We've got 23 Buffalo fighters here. They're B339s, which I believe are Buffaloes, that are within long-range cap range of Singapore. So I have ordered all of these guys to stand down because their fatigue level's pretty high at 33 and 32. So what we've done here as far as our combat air patrol is we've ordered our P-40s and Buffaloes to patrol. And actually, let's set these guys to a 50 cap. And we'll set all fighters at this base to a 50 cap. We'll say at 20,000 feet. And then we'll set the... Actually, no. I should probably set some... The dive bonus is really powerful in this game, but the flip side of that is bombers may well be coming in at lower altitude. Although maybe they'll be flying higher if they do come at Singapore to avoid heavy flak. The problem is he's way more maneuverable than me, so like diving is one of my few options. But I also don't... It's a little bit gamey to dive like from super high up. The Buffaloes aren't very good anyway. They can go up to 15,000 without any penalties. 20,000 they do have some maneuver penalties. But they're going to get way outmaneuvered anyway. We'll set one of these guys to a little bit lower altitude. just in the event that the bombers come in low, we don't want to miss them. We want to make sure we at least engage them. So the rest of these guys will be at 20,000. We're set to 50% cap, which means that we've got 32 aircraft, I believe, up at any one time. And then you can scramble more, I think, also. So that should help keep fatigue from being too big of an issue. And actually, why don't we, just for this one turn, we're going to bump it up to 60. So we'll set all fighters at this base to 60 cap, just so we've got a few more in the air in the event that he does come at us this turn. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to drop his altitude. So that way, if he does come at us, then we've got more than, 35 aircraft up in the air. I'm not sure how many he could bring against us. Probably would devastate. You know what? For these guys, let's just set them to 100% cap, because what I'm going to do next turn is something different. So that'll get us maybe over 40 aircraft up. And what I'm going to do is these guys are all stood down because their fatigue level is over 30. So I'm going to get these guys to fly a long-range cap, 23 aircraft, 100% long-range cap over Singapore tomorrow. So then that way we can kind of shift back and forth between who needs rest. So that's what we're going to do. And that even assumes he attacks us. He hasn't even attacked Singapore yet. So who knows? Meanwhile, we've got another squadron here of B-33-9s, Ds. There's 7 here. I'm moving the second part of that squadron over here, somewhere over here, I think. They're around. They really are. Because this is only a fragment. Yeah, so I've moved them to Merrick. So they're off map for a day because they've already moved. But then tomorrow, we'll fly them from Merrick here up to Palembang. They'll merge, and then we'll have another 12 or 11 aircraft squadron that we can shuttle into Djambi as well. So we could theoretically have 30 aircraft in long-range cap, which would give us potentially as much as 100 fighters over Singapore, although not all up at once. So at least would lead to several days of heavy air fighting, I believe, over the island of Singapore. But with that, or the city of Singapore. But with that being said, if that's good, that's going to do it for our December 15th turn. We'll see how things play out. If we go back to ships sunk, is it still saying that we sunk the Congo? Because I don't believe that. It still thinks we sunk the Congo. I'm waiting for this to go away. I mean, I'd be thrilled if we got like a lucky hit and it touched off the magazine, but I'm pretty sure we didn't sink the Congo because we got like one hit on it. And I think we saw it sailing away at good speed. Anyway, we'll see. I'm pretty sure we sunk the Haruna. Actually, I'm almost certain we sunk the Haruna. We did get one of his subs. Did we sink anything last turn? No, we did not. Did we lose anything last turn? We lost the S-38. We lost a light transport near the Philippines. And we lost a motor torpedo boat near Hong Kong. So that was last turn. Yeah, so any ship withdrawals? Need to make sure we withdraw our ships when we need to, otherwise you get penalized. Doesn't look like it. Ground withdrawals. These guys in Cape Town, some coastal defense guns. Or is this a merchant ship? Supply convoy? It's going to be providing 180,000 supply and 18,000 fuel to... I don't really understand how these work. But it looks like it's going to be providing a lot of supply in 3 days to Cape Town, so that's cool. Yeah, no one else is withdrawing anytime soon. Air unit withdrawals. No one within a month. Some of these Chinese units, dive bomber units near Changsha are going to be withdrawing. Our B-18 Bolos near Fresno are withdrawing to the east coast. Some B-17s near Spokane. Nothing near the front line. Just one B-17 group in about a month. Some Port Moresby units. But yeah, so that's currently the situation right now. If we look at in our pools, what do we have the most of in our pools? A lot of heavy industry, a lot of naval support, some naval mines, Soviet rifle squads, which is a shame we can't use them, Filipino rifle squads. What have we used the most of so far outside of heavy industry? Quite a few engineers used. CMF. I don't know what that is. Is that Chinese infantry? I'm not sure. Chinese infantry squads, by the way, 22 in pool, 73 used. Yeah, I'm sure this is all thrilling and exciting. The KNILs are using everything they've got. So anyway. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Let's go ahead and end the turn, send it back over to XTRG, and maybe in about a week we'll have another turn. Until then, guys, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and God bless America, the Allies, and the struggle against Japan. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.